All right, can everyone hear me? Am I good, Bree?
Yeah, you're good.
All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the December virtual field trip, Baffling Baffle Boxes. I'm your host, Megan Selva, Environmental Programs Coordinator for the City of Melbourne. I wanted to share some quick reminders with you before we go further, introducing Brianna Forte with MRC and our guest speakers. All participants are muted. And if you have any questions for our engineering expert, please put them in the Q&A and we'll answer as many as possible at the end of the presentation. Next slide. By the end of this presentation, you'll be able to identify the Lagoon Loyal logo, list 3 activities people use the Indian River Lagoon for, maybe you already know some, define pollutants, provide examples of pollutants, learn and explain the role of a baffle box, rain garden, and retention pond in protecting the Indian River Lagoon, and provide 3 activities that can help protect the Indian River Lagoon from pollutants. Next slide, yeah. Also today we have a special contest going on. Whichever classroom mails us the most drawings of what you learned today will get a classroom set of poop bags and Lagoon Loyal gaiters. So you'll email the drawings or you can mail them to Lisa Good with our engineering department, and she'll explain that further at the end of our presentation. All right, next slide. Before we get to our main event, Brianna Forte, Programs Coordinator with the MRC with Marine Resources Council, would like to give a short intro about being Lagoon Loyal, and then we'll introduce our speakers. Take it away, Bree.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Bree Forte. I'm the Programs Coordinator at the Marine Resources Council, and today's programming is brought to you by Lagoon Loyal. Hopefully you've seen this logo around the city of Melbourne and Brevard County. Basically, it's the educational outreach portion, hoping to raise awareness for stormwater pollution. So, first of all, the Indian River Lagoon is a 156-mile long estuary system, and it ranges from about 5 feet to 20 feet in depth. And it has 3 bodies of water, which are the Mosquito Lagoon, the Indian River, and the Banana River. And it's a beautiful ecosystem full of 4,400 different species of animals and plants. It's really biodiverse and has a lot of purposes for both humans and animals, but there is an issue with the health of the Indian River Lagoon due to stormwater pollution. So what is stormwater runoff? Basically, all the hard surfaces shown in this picture with the roof and the streets, they don't absorb the rainwater, and instead they gather the pollutants like car oil and dog poop, all the yucky stuff that you don't want in the IRL, and it ends up going through the storm drains and dumping into the river. So it's very limited water flow in the IRL too, because it's not a river, even though that's the name. The water doesn't flow very well. So once the pollutants are in there, it has a very negative impact. And those pollutants, such as nitrogen and phosphorus, end up creating harmful algae blooms, which prevent sunlight from going in, and then all the grass on the bottom doesn't grow, and it becomes a very bad system. So as you can see on the left side of this picture, there's the healthy system where the sunlight's getting in and there are no pollutants, and on the right side of this picture, all that nitrogen and phosphorus is leading to sunlight not getting in, and there's muck on the bottom of the lagoon. So how can we help this issue? First and foremost, if you have a dog, you can pick up their waste and make sure that it doesn't get into the lagoon. Additionally, you can keep grass clippings off of the streets and instead put them on your lawn, and reduce your waste in total. So instead of throwing things on the ground, making sure that they don't get washed into the river, instead putting it in trash bags or recycling and not using as much single-use plastic. And finally, making sure that you love our lagoon. just spreading that love and learning, maybe sharing what you learned today would be a great way to start and help raise awareness. So now I'm going to pass it back on to Lisa with the engineering department to tell you more about what we have in the city of Melbourne. And first, stop share. There's also a poll question, but Lisa, are you ready?
Yep, I'm good. If you guys are good.
Yep, we're good.
All right. So good morning, everybody. My name is Lisa, and I'm here to share with you the Enviroscape. The Enviroscape is just a scaled down model or a model of a coastal community like here in the city of Melbourne. And in this model, just like in the city of Melbourne, we have everyday life things. We have schools where people go to school, just like you and me. We have homes where people live, gas stations where they get their go-go juice, hospitals where they get their bones fixed, etc. We have rivers and streams, like let's say right here. And then we also have farms where our food is grown. So when people go about their daily lives, they actually, some do it on purpose and other people do it accidentally, but they sometimes leave things on the ground. So sometimes people will throw things out their car window as they're driving, like McDonald's cups, maybe some cigarettes, maybe that, grade on the poor grade that they got on their math test, something along those lines. And all that litter ends up wherever it is tossed. Sometimes, like, they will go ahead and mow their grass. And instead of blowing their grass clippings back on the lawn, which is a good thing, they instead blow them into the roadway because for whatever reason, they don't want those grass clippings on their property. They think maybe they're ugly. Who knows? I don't know. But they throw them right there. They blow them out into the streets. Sometimes people take their dogs for a walk and maybe they forget their poop bag. And so they just let the poop stay on the ground. And then of course at farms, there's lots of animals and all those animals have to go potty eventually. So all their little droppings end up on the ground as well. And of course on farms, we have plants. And when people have plants, they have dirt that's exposed. So when the rainwater comes, that soil can sometimes get loose and erode. So we're going to put down some cocoa powder here to represent the soils. And in order to get those plants to grow nice and quick, they will sometimes add what's known as fertilizer. Fertilizer is a substance that allows the plants, gives it the nutrients it needs in order to grow really quick, super fast, and nice and green. And last but not least, as they go about their daily activities, their cars will leave stuff on the ground as well. And one of those pollutants that it might leave behind is oil. And as they drive to work, they leave that oil, or as they go to the hospital, they leave that oil on the ground too. Well, eventually that rain is going to come. And when that rain does come, that rainwater ideally will land on and that rain will get absorbed by the soils and by the grass and used in the photosynthetic process, where the rain goes into the soil and the plants use it to grow. But sometimes when we have cities, we have an awful lot of concrete, and these hard surfaces, like Bree mentioned, do not absorb water. Instead, they just collect the water, and the water pools and pools and pools. And in order to avoid flooding, we put holes in the ground that are called storm drains or inlets or catch basins, whatever it is that you want to call them. And those holes are there to drain the water off of the roads to stop the water from going into our homes and causing our roads to be dangerous. Well, those storm drains have to go somewhere. And as you can see, they will lead directly to the local water body that's in the area because it's got to go somewhere. And as that rainwater falls, it pushes all those pollutants, all that trash, all that nastiness either into the storm drains or the ditches and the swales and into the local water body. For us here in Melbourne, that water body is going to be the Indian River Lagoon for most of us. And that's exactly what Bree was talking about. All those pollutants, all those things that cause danger to the environment go into the lagoon and then cause muck to develop on the bottom. It blocks the sunlight from reaching the bottom of the lagoon where the seagrass grows. And then that seagrass can't get the sunlight it needs to live. And so it dies. And as it dies, it decays and it releases lots of nutrients into the water that the algae that lives in there love to eat. And then it makes that nice thick green algae bloom that we've all seen in the past. So this is probably one of the worst case scenarios that we can have happen here in Brevard and Melbourne. And so, but there is things that we can do to help stop this from happening. One, we can go ahead and blow our grass clippings back onto our grass. Just put them back right there on the grass. Two, you can pick up your dog waste by using a plastic bag and throwing that bag into the trash. Three, we can install devices around our gardens that stop the soil from eroding off into the water bodies. Those are called silt fences. You can also get your cars fixed so that they don't leak this nasty oil when they drive around town. Fertilizer needs to get used sparingly, if at all, and only during the appropriate time of the year. And of course, probably the easiest one for all of us to do is to pick up our trash and put it where trash belongs. But for those individuals that aren't going to do some of these steps, and the stuff does get still into the waterways and into our lagoon, there are devices that can be used in order to stop that from happening. And so we're going to have Miss Dani from the city engineer's office. She's going to share with us how that happens. But first, we're going to have a poll question about which pollutant do you think is the most dangerous to the fish that live in the lagoon. This is an opinion question, so there's no right or wrong answer. Just go ahead and share with us what you think is the most dangerous one. Three.
All right, we have about 26 people that have answered, so I'm gonna end the poll. It looks like 54% have chosen trash or litter, with the other 31% grass clippings and dog poop with 15%.
Dani's getting in position right now.
Looking good, Dani.
Perfect.
So did one of you want to answer the poll question, which pollutant is the most dangerous to fish that live in the lagoon?
What are my choices? I don't have the answers in front of me.
Dog poop,
Yeah.
grass clippings, trash, litter.
Let's say trash and litter for the moment.
Okay, great. Yeah, 54% said trash and litter. Great.
Perfect. That's funny. Put it in the trash.
So whenever you guys are ready,
Okay.
Dani's going to talk about this Baffle box. It's all open, and the vac truck, and she'll talk more about the vac truck, but that's what helped open that screen there.
So hi, everybody. My name is Dani, and I am one of our engineers with the city of Melbourne. And one of my jobs is to help find projects that'll help the lagoon. So as part of that, we look at places where there's already an existing waterway that runs out to the lagoon. Those are our first choices for our projects. And then we use other locations as needed to be able to help the lagoon as best as possible. And we have lots of different tools that we use to be able to do this treatment of the stormwater that runs off. So this project at Sherwood has 3 different tools that we use, and they all do something a little different, but all about the same, but they all have different levels of how well they treat things. So I'm standing in front of one of our Baffle boxes. This Baffle box was installed just a few months ago, and it's along a ditch system that runs through the neighborhood in Sherwood. And that neighborhood was built well before they had any rules on how to build stormwater projects. So we're able to put this Baffle box in and divert the water that runs off from the neighborhood. So all of those grass clippings and trash and extra fertilizer and all those things that Lisa talked about that ends up in our waterways, this is one of those projects that we put in to help remove them. So this baffle box has diverts water into it from the stream behind me. And then it comes through and it has a screening system which catches all sorts of stuff. So I am looking at it now and I see some Coke cans and I see some plastic bottles and it looks like, I don't know, maybe that's a detergent bottle and lots of leaves and trash and all sorts of grossness that ends up in the waterways. So the basket collects all of that and we've had quite a bit of rain. So there's quite a bit of water in this box. And then behind there is a red boom that catches all of the stuff that gets past the basket. So we have 2 ways to catch the stuff. And our vac truck comes out once a month and it cleans all of that gunky stuff out of there and gets rid of it so that it doesn't end up in the lagoon. And then on the other side of that red boom is a submerged basket that you can't really see that the water goes through. So when you make Kool-Aid, and you dissolve the Kool-Aid into the water, you can't really separate it. So the nitrogens and the phosphorus, and that's the extra stuff that comes off of the grass clippings and your fertilizers, as that is dissolved in the water, there's some magic stuff in that filter down there, and it separates all of those parts and pieces out of the water. And so it helps make the water even cleaner. And then it leaves out through that great big pipe on one end. And then it comes in from one end and goes out the other, and then it goes back out into the stream, and then it ends up in the lagoon a little healthier than it was when it came in. So this great big vac truck is used to suck all the grossness that's in this baffle box every month. So we have 15, I think, at the moment operating baffle boxes. And so they have to go out once a month and clean them. They also clean them before and after big storms, just to make sure that, because those are big movers of debris. So we continue to do those every day, every month, so that we get as much material out of it as possible. So here you go. So
so we do have a video. If Bree wants to share it, there is a video
Yep.
of how the baffle box kind of works in action if you wanted to show that.
So Bree, why don't you go ahead and show our little video, and I'll move down to our next little treatment train piece of the puzzle, and we'll walk down and we'll talk about some ponds and some rain gardens.
Sounds good.
Alrighty, I'm sharing my screen now. Can everyone hear it? Or maybe there's no.
Thank you.
So yeah, this is basically a baffle box.
I'll have to talk over it.
Got a filter here where the trash goes in, all that debris to get filtered. So there you go, all that sediment, all that trash going in, getting filtered through 3 different chambers. And see how the pipes and the water is flowing through? That filters all those pollutants before leaving out to the other pipe. Here's a good visual here. It's picking up that trash, which a lot of it I saw was actually recyclable. So in a rain event, you can see how this baffle box is working to catch that trash and litter and yard waste. And then, yeah, it looks like it just makes it easy for our team to go out and clean the debris that's in there. Great.
Oh, sorry.
So let's do the second poll question while we wait for Dani.
Alrighty. So dog poop management. What should you
Yeah.
do with your
Hello,
dog's poop?
welcome to this afternoon's presentation on hydros as core.
Sorry.
Still had the YouTube up. So what should you do with your dog's poop? Should you leave it on the ground, put it in the trash, or should you step in it? We all know dog poop's got it's a fecal coliform. There's a lot of bacteria in dog poop. So, once that washes off your lawn into the waterways, it gets into our canals leading to the lagoon and causes a lot of bacterial issues and can be very dangerous. So what should we do about that?
Alrighty, you guys are awesome. 32 out of 40 people answered, and you all got it right, 100%. You should not leave it in the ground or step on it, but you should put it in the trash and pick it up.
Awesome. Let's check out, see what Dani's up to.
Dani and Lisa, would you mind sharing your video again and unmuting?
So it looks like you have to undo my video. You have to turn my video back on.
Oh goodness. Okay. I don't. There you go. I asked you to start your video.
There we go.
Perfect. So one of the other tools that the city of Melbourne uses is wet detention ponds. So the stormwater comes in over here to my right, comes in from the neighborhood. So your neighborhood might have a pond in it. It might not. It all depends upon when your neighborhood was built. But if your neighborhood has ponds in it, more than likely they're stormwater ponds, and they're not ponds that you would typically, go and visit on vacation and put your jet ski in or go skiing or swimming in, because these ponds are meant to catch all the grossness that's in the stormwater. So the water comes into the pond, it sits here and it stages, and part of the process is it catches the litter that ends up in here. Sometimes we have litter that ends up in ponds. There's a device on one side that keeps all the litter from going anywhere. It also lets the water settle, and it sits for a little while, and so all the parts and pieces that are in there, they settle down to the bottom of the pond. And then part of our job is on our maintenance crews is to make sure to clean all that stuff out periodically so that it doesn't end up back in the lagoon. And then it holds the water, so it slows down the water. So when we have a big rain, it also prevents flooding downstream because it holds it for a little while and it lets it out slowly so that the streams don't get inundated with too much rainwater. This pond is planted, so there's all sorts of grasses and trees planted around it, and so those plants help uptake some of those nitrogens that are in the water. But we've also found that just plain ponds like this aren't as efficient as we used to think they were. So we use other tools to add to our ponds to help with those things. So one of those things is a rain garden, and so we're going to walk towards our rain garden. Our rain garden has plants and trees and all sorts of good stuff in it that the water comes out of this pond and then diverts into the rain garden. So once it gets there, it settles, a little more settling is always good, but it always parts down and goes through soils into some media that we have in place that just like the Baffle box, the magic stuff in the Baffle box, this stuff also removes the nitrogen and the phosphorus out of the water along with the plants. So plants uptake it, they do something natural, kind of like a wetland does in some of our undisturbed areas. We have wetlands, and those wetlands uptake all of those materials also. So we're using both sets of a wet pond and a rain garden together to make for a much more efficient way to remove the materials than just out of a wet stormwater pond. This project was funded by some grant funding, so we have to do some monitoring on it to make sure that it's working properly. So we'll know in a little over a year how well we did our jobs as engineers and contractors to get it installed to see if it functions properly. So we'll have more information then, and we'll be able to determine if these are efficient tools or if we need to do a little more of our engineering jobs and figure out a little more ways to help the lagoon. These wetland areas, these rain gardens also attract a lot of bird and other life. While we were setting up a while ago, we had an alligator out here and he's gone away. I was hoping to get a picture for y'all. I don't know where he went, but our little alligator was out here. We also have ducks fairly regularly and other birds. There's also fish in the ponds. They're not eating fish. They're just fish to be in there because the fish are helpful too in removing some of the bacteria and plankton out of the water to make them more efficient. So that's all we have out here at Sherwood. Do you have any questions for us?
Awesome. Let's do one more poll question and then we can get
one more poll question.
Yeah, and then we can get to the question.
All right, the question.
Yep.
Got it, Megan.
Go on. Go for it.
I was just gonna ask, which item do the plants in the rain garden help remove from the water entering the lagoon? The options are dog poop, McDonald's cups, or fertilizer. Awesome. So about 30 of the 40 people have voted and 93% say fertilizer, 3% say dog poop, and the other 3% say McDonald's cups. So Lisa and Dani, would you like to comment on that answer?
You're correct. And it does remove the fertilizer. That's probably the biggest job that it does, fertilizer.
Uh-oh, we can't hear you, Dani. Might be your mic. Sorry, can't hear you. Is she muted? No, she's not. Yeah, something with your sounds like something's wrong with your mic. Are you able to disconnect it, or maybe the battery's dead, dying or something?
Is that better?
Oh yes,
That's
here we
much
go.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. That was really weird, but yes. So the fertilizer is what the plants do the most on. That's what they upload the most. They do help a little bit with the dog poop. I will admit it does do a little dog poop, but they don't really help with the McDonald's cups. The McDonald's cups get caught in a different way to be cleaned up and moved out of the water.
Sweet, sweet. So thank you. And that rain garden looks beautiful. The retention pond looks beautiful. You guys have done such a great job. We, as a community, we really appreciate that. So let's get to the questions because we have a lot, quite a few. Kristen asks, how much nitrogen and phosphorus does a wet pond alone remove?
So wet ponds have an efficiency of about 60%. So it all depends upon how much nitrogen and phosphorus comes to it. So they remove about 60% of the nitrogen. And so we have to determine every time we put a pond in, we have to determine what's in the background, what the neighborhood looks like to determine what those efficiency, how much it really does remove.
She's also asking, Oh, go ahead.
Nope, go ahead. Sorry.
She was also asking, does Melbourne spray herbicide in the detention ponds? Wet
So
ponds.
we do have a spraying program because there's only a certain amount of ways to remove the plants that are not good in ponds, because if you get too many cattails and it takes over the pond and then it can't do its job. And so there are some herbicides that we spray, but we have a permit from the state that allows us to do that. And we try to spray at it as little as possible, but we do have to spray on occasion.
Great. Debbie asks, what kind of plants are used?
Plants, there are all sorts of different kind of plants. So in our rain gardens and ponds, we have several different kinds of grasses. There's some fountain grasses and some muley grasses. There's also some wax myrtles. Bald cypresses are great trees to put around ponds because they don't mind to get their feet wet. You have to be careful with oak trees because oak trees don't really like wet feet. We also have some wetland plants of various natures. There's a bunch of these things and I cannot remember all of them because I am an engineer and sometimes plants make me a little crazy. I hire a specialist.
Okay.
To do that.
Yes, and that's great. Mike Johansson's asking, and you may understand this, I don't quite understand it, but what is the difference between a Generation 1 and a Gen 2 baffle box?
Sure. So we have both of those in the city of Melbourne. So a Gen 1 baffle box is the concrete structure that, like the one that we saw, and it has the baffles in it, and that's it. So the water comes in and it slows down as it runs over the baffles and the sediments fall out, but it doesn't catch any debris and it doesn't do any nutrient removal. The baffle box that we just looked at was a second generation baffle box with BAM, with a bioactivated media. I'm sorry, bioabsorption media. So it has the baskets to catch all the debris. It has the baffles to let the water slowly go over the edges. And so all that sediment settles to the bottom. And then it has the media, that special stuff at the end that pulls all the nitrogen and phosphorus out of the water column. So we have both of them. We've also retrofitted some of our older baffle boxes that were Gen 1s to be Gen 2s. And so, but we still have a couple Gen 1s that are out there that we're working on getting retrofitted.
Great. Shanvi Patel asks, when they get the trash from the boxes, do they sort out the recycling and trash, or do they just throw it all away?
So most of that just gets thrown away because the truck that we use to suck it up has a great big hose on it. It's like a big vacuum cleaner. All of that then goes into the big tank that's on the back of it, and then it goes to the back to the yard where it's emptied, and then all of that trash ends up in the trash.
And a lot of those recyclables, they're very dirty and hard to clean, and recycling need to be clean and dry. So it is difficult when it's all mixed together with sediments and such. And he also asked, why are they called baffle boxes?
Well,
I guess a lot of people ask that.
Yeah, the upright portions in the middle that slow down the water, those are called baffles. And so it's a box with baffles in it. So it's a baffle box.
Perfect. Christy Miller asks, what is used in the last step of the baffle box to remove nitrogen and phosphorus? How does it work?
So it's a bioabsorption material. BAM. It was created by one of our local universities and is now available for us all to be able to use. Not our local university, but another one in Central Florida. It's mass marketed and sold by a couple distributors, and it's made up of multiple things. So the mixture that's in the rain gardens is mostly sands and clays and a little bit of tire crumble and a few other things that have been found that attach to the phosphorus or the nitrogen, and so therefore pull it out of the water column. The material that's back in the baffle box is a little different material. It still has tire crumb and some expanded clays and some other materials, but it's a bigger particle so that it has a little more surface area, so because it's catching that water fast as it runs across it, versus the rain gardens where it has time to settle and touch, so it's a little smaller material. But those are the two that we use. There are multiple ones available throughout the state. Other jurisdictions are using different mixtures of them. depending upon what their stormwater looks like. Part of it's dependent on chemistry.
Great. Jen Thompson asks, what are the items most seen in grates or the filters? I guess.
We see a lot of yard debris, grass clippings, leaves, tree branches, all sorts of fun stuff like that. So that's probably the biggest amount, but we do see just a lot of just plain old trash. We see cigarette butts, we see plastic cups and water bottles. We have a couple baffle boxes in town that are notorious for basketballs and tennis shoes. So you kids out there, if you leave your tennis shoes out on the street and then it rains and you can't find them the next morning, they probably ended up in the storm drain somewhere. So but we collect a bunch of unique things in our baffle boxes.
Maybe we should start a lost and found.
Nobody's gonna want those shoes after they've been in a baffle box. I can tell you that.
All right. A fourth grade class is asking, what happens to the animals that get stuck in the baffle box? Do animals get stuck in the baffle box?
Well, we do occasionally have an animal or two. So we've got a couple baffle boxes that are notorious for alligators. We open them up and we've got alligators in them because the water is really clean on the downstream side. So there's sometimes fish likes to be in the baffle box and they live there just fine because they're perfectly happy because they can swim in and out depending upon water flow. We also get turtles. We catch a lot of turtles sometimes. And so our staff has been trained on how to handle those situations. We leave the alligators alone until they like to leave. And then the turtles, if they're in the way, we will carefully move them out of the way until we can get it clean. If not, we just leave them in the baffle box and they can swim right out.
Very cool. Brian Barclay asked, how many years has the city been making baffle boxes?
So we have installed baffle boxes. Our first one went in the spring of 2014. My son was in kindergarten that year, so that's how I remember. So so we've been doing them for quite a while. Baffle boxes have been around. The first generation baffle boxes, we have several that have been much older than that, but these second generation baffle boxes have only been around for the last few years. And so we've found that they're the most cost efficient to install because they don't take up much land for us. This project takes up a lot of land because we built a lot of ponds and some rain gardens. But if we'd just done the baffle box, it would have been just a little tiny footprint and we don't have to disturb a lot of land or buy any land for any of those projects.
Great. Angela would like to know, are there any baffle boxes outside of the Melbourne area?
There sure are. So Brevard County has a lot of them. I can't tell you how many. Titusville has several. There's some in Satellite Beach. City of Palm Bay has a large process or program with baffle boxes. They also have them in West Melbourne. They're also all over the United States and the world.
Great. Let's see. Oh, someone asked a fun question. Micah, have you ever found anything valuable in the baffle boxes? Maybe someone lost something.
We probably have, but again, because we use that great big vacuum to suck it up, we don't really go through the material very much on the processing side to figure out what it is. But if you drop it and it ends up in the water, it could be washed in there. So I'm sure we probably collected a few watches and some wallets over time.
Yeah. This might be a little challenging of a question, but you probably know the answer. Tia wants to know about how much trash is there in the Indian River Lagoon every year?
That is not a number I know off the top of my head. I apologize for that. There are several studies out there by the St. Johns River Water Management District that will have those answers, but I just don't have that number. But I know that it's a very large number.
Yeah, it's a lot. But a lot of groups are, we have a lot of cleanup groups that are trying to tackle that. Jennifer Thompson asked, how big is the basin flowing into the system? Is it primarily residential?
Sure, this basin is loosely 300 acres, and it is mostly residential. And most of this residential was constructed in the late 50s, early 60s. There are a few neighborhoods to the north of us that drain into here, that we catch their stormwater out of their existing ponds, but those ponds were built in the 90s, so they're not nearly as efficient or designed to the criteria currently for it. But a majority of this basin is untreated stormwater that comes in. And so that's why we felt this was a good spot to place it. And the tools that we used, the parts and pieces, the ponds, the baffle box, and the rain gardens were the most efficient to create new stormwater treatment.
Awesome. Larry Harold asks, what happens to the water in the ponds when they can't hold any more water? And we just have a couple more questions.
Sure, not a problem. So the water stages up and it overflows. So eventually these ponds during a big storm won't be able to do much treatment. They're just much more of a holding. So it flows out of the stormwater pond. There's an emergency overflow that takes it directly to the ditch, or some of it will still continue to go to the rain gardens, and the rain gardens have emergency overflows also. So they end up out in the ditch that ends out in the lagoon. So it's going the same place that it would have before. It just gets slowed down by the ponds.
Great. And Sean V asks, why doesn't the fish poop affect the river? Why is it dog poop, I guess?
Well, fish poop is naturally there because fish are supposed to be in the lagoon. Dogs aren't really supposed to be in the lagoon. That's not their natural habitat. Dogs also eat a lot of commercialized pet food, and they have way more nutrients in their food than they would have if they were living in the wild. And the fish don't have that. They just have whatever's available. So the fish poop doesn't really affect the lagoon in a way because other animals do, because they are naturally supposed to be there.
Fantastic. Arthur asked, how many other ways are there to clean the water other than baffle boxes and the neighborhood ponds and I guess rain gardens?
Sure. So there's probably a list that I could spend about an hour going through, but we have other tools that we use. We have dry ponds, and so those work. Instead of being wet all the time, they're only wet when it rains, and so that allows that water to percolate back down into the groundwater and be treated by the soils or any filter material that's in there. We have some denitrification projects that are in, and those go in a multitude of different forms and fashion. Those include putting some BAM in pipes that takes the water directly out of the pond, pushes it through the BAM, and then puts it back into the pond, and then it discharges. Those are done in cases where we have real small footprints and we just don't have space to make a big pond. There's also some other man-made like baffle boxes. There's also some nutrient scrubber boxes that are just the nutrient BAM in there, so the water just goes through and scrubs those. There are baskets that go in inlets that catch debris that can be used. There are numerous tools, and part of my job with the city is trying to figure out which is the best tool to put in the best place to get the best removal for and the best help for the lagoon.
And you're doing a great job. Ms. Breyer asks, and there's a couple questions about this. How much does it cost to make a baffle box? Is it expensive?
So our baffle boxes costs are all dependent upon size. So this project that we're standing here with in Sherwood, now remember, it's 2 ponds, 2 rain gardens, the baffle boxes, the ditch hardening, and the land purchase was a little over $2 million. But our regular baffle boxes aren't nearly that expensive. So we just did one not far from here on Thrush, and it was about $700,000. And that treated an entire neighborhood that was currently untreated. It had larger pipes that went into it, so it was a much bigger box. But they range in cost based upon what size pipe is going into them. Because if they're big pipes, they have to be a big box. If it's a little pipe, it's a little box. So we probably average about $750,000 per project on our baffle boxes right now.
And does it take a long time to build a baffle box?
No, most of our baffle box projects are built anywhere between 150 and 180 days. We try to always do those during dry season. So because most of them are either in a waterway in a piped system, or they're in a waterway. So we don't want to be in there when it's raining because we have to deal with a whole lot more water. They don't typically take very long. The longest time probably is the lead time on getting the box from the manufacturer. And those typically take 12 weeks. And so our schedules are built in a way that allow for those to come.
Great. We have one more question for you, and then want to get up that PowerPoint again, Bree, and just let teachers write down Lisa's address and such. So what last question is, are you in the process of making a Gen 3 Baffle box? Is someone working on that?
So I do know that the manufacturers are out there trying to come up with a more efficient way for baffle boxes to work. And part of that will be, is it a different media? Is it a different screening process? Is it different volumes of water that a baffle box can treat more efficiently? So I don't know of any new Gen 3s that are coming out, but I do know that each of the manufacturers, and especially the manufacturers that we use regularly, are out there looking every day for new ways to help give us new tools to be able to treat stormwater.
Hey, thank you so much. Thank you for being with us as well. It was such a pleasure, Dani and Lisa. Bree, can we get that slideshow up about our contest for today?
So Megan, I have one more thing.
Oh, go for it.
So any of my teachers out there that are watching this that need a presentation for more of a more grade level, so any of our high school teachers or middle school teachers, if they could just contact Lisa, I'd be happy to set up and do a presentation for them on their grade level versus, you know, today's presentation that we targeted more of our 3rd through 5th grade classes.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we've got this slide up here with Lisa's email. If you'd like our awesome engineers to come talk to your class about stormwater, please write down Lisa's email. And then for the contest, whichever class sends the most drawings showing what you learned today, you will get a whole classroom set of poop bags and Lagoon Loyal gators. So here's the mailing address on the right side. So if you write that down, then you can send in your drawings. And then I think, yeah, I just want to make sure everyone gets that down.
And we will also be recording this and posting it on the Marine Resources Council website. And there's also going to be a recording on our Facebook page as well, if you guys would like to reference this later on.
And then the last slide is if you scan that QR code, you can get some points for Lagoon Loyal.
Also on the Lagoon Loyal website, you can learn how to reduce your impact for stormwater pollution. So it's a really good resource just to learn more at lagoonloyal.com. Thank you guys so much for attending, and thank you, Dani and Lisa, for an amazing presentation.
Have a great day, everyone.